Muy bien, ahora sí. Ya estamos en vivo en Lo que dice la ley, un episodio más de este show donde pues hacemos un esfuerzo por aprender de nuestro sistema jurídico en los Estados Unidos, de las leyes de los Estados Unidos, porque muchos de nosotros latinoamericanos venimos de un sistema diferente, jurídico, tanto jurídico como, o sea, el sistema jurídico como con lo que son las leyes. Y pues lo que siempre me ha llamado mucho la atención debido a que pues estudié en México, estudié leyes en México, a veces no sabemos lo importante que son aprender las leyes hasta que estamos en algún aprieto o que queremos porque hicimos algo mal o porque alguien nos hizo algo a nosotros y no sabemos nuestros derechos. Y es que es bien importante saber de la ley porque lo sepas o no lo sepas, la ley de todos modos se va a cumplir y es mucho, muy importante. En esta ocasión tengo al abogado Curt Thompson, que también es ex senador del estado de Georgia. Y bueno, queremos platicar de un tema que es para mí súper importante, sobre todo que estamos en fechas, en un año electoral en los Estados Unidos, hay cambio de presidente. Y estoy notando últimamente, como platiqué con el abogado, estoy notando una especie como de, no veo a la gente tan preocupada por votar. De hecho, estoy pensando y sintiendo que hay muchas personas que a lo mejor no piensan ni siquiera votar. Y bueno, quiero tomar cartas en el asunto y hacer lo mío. A mí no me gusta mucho hablar de política realmente, pero siempre, no es mi tema favorito, pero con mucho gusto lo abordo y lo hacemos lo más interesante posible. Buenas tardes, Kurt.
Buenas tardes y gracias por invitarme aquí.
No, hombre, fue un placer, agradezco tu tiempo. Bueno, me gustaría mucho empezar con lo que habíamos platicado y que hemos estado platicando de este derecho que podría tener un estado en los Estados Unidos de excluir a un presidente de lo que es ser parte de las elecciones, como en el caso me estoy refiriendo a Colorado, donde votaron para quitar a Donald Trump de ser elegido como presidente en su estado.
Ujú.
Entonces, esto ha creado un sinnúmero de cosas y podamos platicar de ellas, pero si nos puedes dar una idea como senador y como abogado del derecho constitucional que tiene un estado de excluir a un presidente, a un candidato.
Aún no entiendo exactamente su pregunta, lo siento, pero obviamente cada estado tiene votos en el colegio electoral.
Ujú.
Es eso?
Sí,
Entonces es muy importante. Su voto no es por presidente directamente como en Colombia o
México.
en México. Um, pero vo- su voto es por un grupo de electorales. Entonces, ¿qué presidente ganan en Georgia? Ganan los votos electorales en el colegio de, elector, de electorales. Um,
Ujú.
y
Si lo
ese
quieres explicar
grupo
más o
se
menos
votan oh, lo siento, ¿qué?
si quieres explicarlo en inglés y yo lo traduzco lo antes posible,
Okay.
ujú,
So you vote for actually a slate of electors,
ujú,
and that those electors are supposed to vote for. In this case, it would be Biden if he is the Democratic nominee, or Trump, or whoever the nominee is. And even third party candidates have slates of electors, whether that is Robert Kennedy, who is running this time, or Ralph Nader, who ran in 2000,
ujú,
or Ross Perot, who ran in the 90s. You would get slates of electors, and whoever wins the state, even if it's just a plurality. In other words,
ujú.
if there are three candidates, um, the person that gets the most votes wins. That's actually how Biden won. Biden only got about 49% of the vote because some minor candidates got about 1 or 2% of the vote.
Okey,
And then
so,
the
básicamente, en este caso, en Estados Unidos se vota en cada estado se vota individualmente y quien sea que gane se lleva todos los electorales que tenga ese estado. Hay estados que pueden valer 16 votos, otros pueden valer 30, otros pueden valer 5, dependiendo. Pero ahorita lo que yo quería saber era, platícame un poco del derecho que tiene un estado, the right of the state to omit a candidate from.
El derecho para
Mhm.
omitir. Es posible si, this is for the 14th Amendment. Essentially, this comes down to that. Because
Yes.
the other rules, the president has to be a natural born citizen, the president has to be 35. Those are automatic.
Mhm.
But it appears that what is being decided in the Supreme Court right now is how to interpret the 14th Amendment, or this Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, that says that if you've been an officer engaged in insurrection against the United States, you cannot serve. You can't become you can't serve in office, whether that's as president or something else. And there's an
Yes.
argument about whether it applies to the president, which I think it does, and then whether what Trump did constitutes insurrection, because the only time this has ever been used was in the 1800s against a group of congressmen who had helped the Confederacy in the Civil War.
Yes.
And
Okay.
so it had been used to stop about 6 people from running for office back in the 1870s, 1880s, when this was
Esta enmienda, o sea, prácticamente lo que se está discutiendo en lo que es en la Suprema Corte, si la decisión del estado de Colorado de omitir, no dejar que el expresidente Donald Trump sea parte de la boleta, de las boletas electorales de este año. Prácticamente, ahorita se está discutiendo en la Suprema Corte si eso si es correcto, es anticonstitucional o si se puede permitir. Yo siento, Kurt, yo creo que, ojalá que me entiendas en mi español, voy a hacer un esfuerzo por hacerlo bien claro. Está muy mal lo que yo veo de los jueces de la Suprema Corte, está súper, no hace sentido, es increíble que tengan este tipo de razonamientos. Una de ellas dice, es que cómo vamos a permitir que un estado decida quién o no va a poder ser presidente. Y no es cierto. El estado de Colorado lo único que está haciendo no es mi constitución, es la constitución de nuestro país la que dice que él no debe de, o sea, ellos están teniendo el valor de defender la constitución, o sea, ellos están siendo antipopulares, ¿verdad? Vamos a decirlo y decir, no, es que él está violando, en tus ojos no, o te estás haciendo el loco, right? In your eyes, you're not really paying attention, or you just want to pretend that you don't see it. But in our eyes, he is not qualified to be a candidate because the 14th Amendment, Section 3. It's simple as that. And I'm going to put it again here so people can see it on the screen. And what it says, that no person should be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, and blah, 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 blah. It's there. O sea, para mí es muy fácil, está muy sencillo.
The question, la pregunta es eso, ¿qué es la definición de insurrección?
Sí.
Eso es eso. Y en Colorado tiene un trial, un hearing, una fecha en la corte, los jueces.
Una audiencia.
Una audiencia en la corte por 2 o 3 días, yo pienso, yo lo creo. They had a hearing for 3 days, and they decided based on that evidence that constituted insurrection. Admittedly, in the Civil War, that was a fairly easy. It was not a close call because that was an actual war with shooting, and the question here is, what did this assault on the Capitol and trying to get pressure states to change their votes and the whole effort to get Vice President Pence to not recognize the electoral votes, does that count as insurrection or not? I think it does, because a coup is a coup, whether it is a violent coup or a non-violent coup. A coup is a coup.
Yes. And it's hard because a lot of people want to, even friends, and this is where it gets very funny because you start losing friends. I lose friends and customers and everything. And the only thing is just make sense. Okay, you want a certain kind of a president, that's fine. Just follow the rules, right? At least if we can follow the rules, because as we go with this program, we will understand how important it is to follow the rules. And when someone starts not following the rules, someone will start doing that, the same thing. If we all start having some kind of criteria when to follow and when not to follow, we're gonna end up in a mess. So, estamos básicamente, ¿tú crees entonces, Kurt, que, so you can say, do you think Colorado is in its rightful? I mean, he's
I do.
right. Okay.
Yeah, sí, yo lo creo, o entiendo. Obviamente, Maine dice tome la misma decisión,
Okay.
el estado de Maine, pero California y Michigan tome una decisión diferente. Y eso es el problema, es cuando Trump está en el ballot, en la elección en algunos estados, pero no en otros estados. Y eso es la dificultad.
Ok, ¿cuál es la dificultad? O sea, es decir, ¿qué es lo que está difícil de es decir, bueno, primeramente te voy a preguntar algo. Otros estados podrían decir, bueno, yo no quiero tener a Biden en la boleta. Hay esa posibilidad que otro estado de Texas, por ejemplo, diga, no, bueno, yo no quiero a Biden.
Bueno, in reality, Lincoln was not on the ballot in most of the southern states in the 1860 election. He still won, but he was not on the ballot because of that sort of thing.
Yes, for what happened. And bueno, entonces, podemos decir que hay posibilidad. ¿Tú cuál crees que sea? ¿Podrías predecir más o menos lo que la Suprema Corte podría interpretar en esta situación y tú crees ¿qué podrías pensar que va a pasar ahorita con el estado de Colorado?
Con la decisión de la Corte Suprema.
Sí.
Más o menos las predicciones están que la Corte Suprema dice no a Colorado. It appears that they're going to probably it appears that a majority of the justices appear to be inclined to tell Colorado, no, you cannot do that. The question is going to be why, and is it and are they going to just say this? Yeah, because there were different arguments. One of the arguments is you can run, but you can't serve, although that does not make sense to me. So I don't like the arguments, but you have a 6-3 conservative majority on the Supreme Court that may want to go that way. And it looks like at least one of the more moderate members of the court is looking to go that way as well. And I think their fear probably is having, now in this modern era, having Biden not on the ballot in Texas and Trump not on the ballot in Colorado would be very divisive. I am assuming. I still think Colorado made the correct decision. I just wish the Supreme Court were more open to seeing that, because especially early now when they could find a different nominee.
Okay. Yes. Well, it's we're in a difficult situation, and as we understand that, but what do you think is more what do you think is, I mean, what do you think it will be easier for our country to accept that Colorado will be the decision of Colorado's state is revoked, or just to what I'm trying to say is just allowing, but I'm gonna have to delete all that. But I need to restart. But I think, are you happy with that? With letting the Supreme Court take action against Colorado, and Colorado accepting Trump, or just be okay with that and stop from the other states from keeping
Right.
Biden from the ballot? I mean, what do you give me a little bit?
I
of your
believe in the
opinion.
rule of law. So if the Supreme Court says it has, then even if I disagree with it, we have to go. That's what I think is that we have to go along with it. I don't think we can do what, for instance, Texas is doing about the Supreme Court ruled against Texas putting that razor wire in the river. And Texas said, well, we're not going to follow. We just don't care. We're not going to listen to what the Supreme Court says. If we start picking and choosing based on our politics, whether we're going to follow the Supreme Court or not, that's sort of that's going to lead to the collapse of how the country works, because everything depends on people following the law, even when they don't agree with the law. And if you don't agree with the law, you try to change the law. You don't just ignore the law. So so I can want that. I can disagree with the Supreme Court's decision and still say we have to respect it, and then hopefully try to beat Trump in November, hoping that finishes this, because hopefully that will.
Sí, sabes, básicamente lo que Curt está de acuerdo con que, bueno, si la Suprema Corte decide que Colorado como estado no puede quitar a Donald Trump de las boletas electorales, bueno, ni modo, o sea, es la ley. La ley dice que la Suprema Corte puede decidir eso, y dice Curt que él está bien con eso, ¿verdad? You understand what I said, right?
Sí.
But on the other hand, you have a state of Texas where sometimes en el otro caso es pero también hay casos como Texas, Texas, que a veces se pasa las decisiones de la Corte Suprema por el arco del triunfo. Entonces, eso sí es lo que es bastante triste. Ahora, ¿por qué siempre? What do you think, Curt, the liberal, I mean, why they're more tolerant liberal, I mean, the Democrats, I hate to say liberals, are more tolerant to whatever wrongdoings of the Republicans or the conservatives, and not the other way around? I mean, why you accept it, you're okay, or nobody says anything about this?
Because we believe, I guess I think that Democrats, or at least the way it seems, but we have a situation right now where there is not a functioning two-party system. One party believes that you can win and lose and you live to fight another day, and the struggle continues and you're constantly pushing, but you have to respect the law. And one side believes that, because that's how a government is supposed to work, and if you believe in government, which Democrats do, then you believe in making it work. The other side seems to only believe in government if they're in control and if they win every argument and every decision.
Sí, it's very sad. We'll get to kind of debating things and talking opinions in a little bit. But okay, and then, ¿por qué? Esto es bien interesante. Hay un juez federal en la Corte de Apelaciones que se llama J. Michael Luttig, o no sé cómo se pronuncie, pero él, siendo un conservador, o sea, él es un juez conservador, está preocupado y pide a la Suprema Corte que no dejen a Donald Trump que sea candidato presidencial. Will you give me some kind of overall, what would you think he's worried about?
I think he's worried that if Trump is allowed to be in power, he is going to become a dictator. And a true conservative who believes in small government, I guess a true conservative is more like a libertarian. They don't want they want the opposite of a dictator. They want as small a government as possible, not someone as controlling as possible. And Judge Luttig is an old style, because he is an older judge, conservative from that era when conservative didn't mean controlling, it meant small government, not controlling government.
That's right. So do you think that whatever happened last December, 2021, January 6th, and the whole thing that he did the whole time, Donald Trump, do you think there's enough evidence for him to say that this is what's going to happen?
I mean, I think that eventually he is going to get convicted either in the D.C. case about the insurrection or in the Georgia case about trying to pressure the Georgia legislature and the Secretary of State into either finding votes, fixing the election for him, or changing the results of the election. The other two cases that are out there, he has 91 counts against him, but the other two cases aren't directly about January 6th or about the election. One is about his affair, his attempt to cover up the affair, and one is about him taking records from the government that did not belong to him. But
yes.
I think that one of those two cases he will get convicted on.
And then if he gets to be a president, then you're talking about another 4 years. But do they have the statute of limitation, those cases? What happened there? I mean,
he would probably, since he would control the Justice Department, he would have them dismiss the DC case and the Florida case. He can't do anything about the Georgia and the New York case, but they would be put on pause until he left office. There is case law that says that he would have to wait until after. They would have to wait until after he left office. I guess if he left office, to try him on those state charges in New York or Georgia.
Okay.
So the two federal cases would, in all honesty, go away. He would make them go away because he's president. He would be president, and he could do that. The two state cases would be postponed until after he'd left office.
Is that, there's a rule in place already that they understand this kind of, anticipates this kind of situation where you can put a statute, like a pause. Nothing happened in time, and then, hey, you're here, come here. So basically, if he loses the following election, for some reason, there's something so wrong, he will try to do the same thing to stay in power so he doesn't get...
This is why people are afraid of him being a dictator.
Yes. Ok. Muy bien. Vamos a continuar rápidamente sobre el sistema de votaciones primarias abiertas. Me gustaría muy bien si me puedes explicar cómo es que algunos estados, en este estado, si nos puedes más o menos platicar tú como senador o como abogado que conoces la Constitución de los Estados Unidos, ¿quién decide esto de que una persona que por lo general vota demócrata, o que puede ser registrada como demócrata? Tú puedes ir a votar en estas primarias republicanas, tú, como Curt Thompson.
Yo puedo, obviamente, soy un demócrata, entonces normalmente voto demócrata en los primarios, pero es un open primary, una primaria abierta en Georgia, es posible preguntar por cada ballot, demócrata o republicano, no es importante. La cosa es eso, en un runoff, si existe no por presidencia, elecciones presidencial, pero por representantes, senadores, congresistas, es posible tomar una segunda vuelta si no candidato ganan 50% y uno. Si tu voto republicano en la primera vuelta, no es posible voto demócrata en un runoff, en una segunda vuelta. ¿Entiendes?
Más o menos, ¿lo podrías decir en inglés para entender?
Okay. We have an open primary, so you can pick whichever ballot, but if you vote Republican in the primary, and if there is a primary runoff because no one gets 50% plus one, you cannot switch. Like once you vote Republican in that election, you can't vote. You could not switch and vote Democrat in the runoff. Now, in the next election, the next year, it's open. You can change Republican to Democrat. Like in 24, you can vote Democrat, in 26 Republican. But if you're voting Republican in 24 and there's a runoff, which means that there were more than one candidate, they did not get 50% of the vote, then you have to stay Republican or stay Democrat.
Bien entendido. Súper bien entendido. Básicamente, ya que te decidiste, aquí en Estados Unidos, algunos estados no tienen este sistema, pero Georgia sí tiene el sistema abierto. Por ejemplo, cuando estuvieron compitiendo Obama contra Hillary en las primarias, muchos republicanos decidieron votar, ¿verdad? Stop Hillary. Tenían una promoción por todos lados, Stop Hillary. Y todos votaron como demócratas para votar por Obama, para que no ganara Hillary. Entonces ganó Obama gracias a muchos de esos estados y pues ya ves, ganó como presidente. Muy bien, muy bien. ¿Algo que quisieras agregar sobre el sistema de primarias? Perdóname por la tos.
Otra vez, lo siento.
¿Quisieras agregar algo referente? Would you like to add something about the open system?
Nada elección es perfecto. Los sistemas diferentes, los dos sistemas tienen problemas y advantages. I think if in a closed primary, the Republicans get to pick their leader. The Democrats get to pick their leader. But in an open system, it does help moderates, people who are more to the middle.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yes. Also, they can use it for tricky things.
Yeah, they can use it for tricky things. I guess I probably prefer the closed primary myself, but both have advantages and disadvantages. So
yes, it's true. It's true. I admire people. Yo admiro a las personas como tú, muchas personas que deciden ser parte de un grupo y ayudar y colaborar. Yo he sido demócrata por muchos años, pero la verdad me quiero siempre sentir como independiente porque me gustaría que hubiera más gente independiente, porque en cierta forma yo creo que deberíamos pensar siempre así, no pertenecer solo a un grupo. Lamentablemente, con tanta polarización y con tanto sistema, esta nueva forma de ser en los últimos años, muchos años, de estar en contra de cosas, ya ni siquiera porque es tu verdadero, que están, no, por estar en contra de algo, no solo porque está fuera de ti, de tus principios, sino que estás en contra de algo porque alguien de tus amigos está en contra de eso. No sé si me estoy entendiendo. Es como como que ser parte de una tribu, ¿no? That tribal mentality, that's what is hurting us. That's why.
yeah.
But anyway, let's move on to, básicamente me gustaría, si tú crees, o sea, a ver, ¿qué es lo que te haría pensar? Would you explain what's the difference between a simple riot and insurrection?
An insurrection is an attempt, is I guess a riot or a conflict of some kind with the aim of overthrowing the government. A riot is any demonstration that gets out of hand for violence. The George Floyd riots, or the, if you remember back to the Rodney King riots, those were violent. There were political demonstrations, but no one was trying to take over the government, if that makes sense. That's the difference between insurrection. A riot, insurrection is a type of riot where you're trying to overthrow the government, or it can be. Insurrection can also be a war, like the Civil War, or a coup, like trying to get the electors to change their vote, get the states to change their votes, because a coup is a coup is a coup, whether it is violent or not. Insurrection is more like a type of attempted coup, whereas a riot is any type of political demonstration that that gets violent. It doesn't have to have the goal of overthrowing the government.
And what is there to consider? I mean, or not to consider this to be an insurrection. I mean, everything was set. I mean, the president, while I was being still the president, he was saying things he was not recognizing, and his followers and all these people, they just were chanting and saying all the things that needed to be said and considered.
I mean, they attacked the Capitol. They tased police officers. They tried to get, at one end of the extreme, taking over the Capitol. At the other end of the extreme, they were trying to get the vice president to do something that, sorry, that was the phone interrupting, but the vice president to not recognize the election results. They were trying to pressure states to changing their election results. So all of that is about a coup. You know, it's about an attempt to overthrow. I don't know how you can interpret it any other way, which is why the other side, if you watch Fox News, tries to pretend that none of that happened. They want to just say that never happened. You know,
I mean, where are we gonna end? Where are we? That's why I'm in this conversation, which it is easier for me not to have it. It's easier for me not to talk about it and move along with most of my friends that are conservators, and they don't care. But if we start denying reality, where are we gonna end? This is pretty scary. So give me just very quick, Curt, idea. Give me some kind of idea. How do you see personally what would happen if that day they make it, they get there, the power has not been transferred, the president there in the moment, Donald Trump gets back to the White House. What can you tell me? What would it be if nothing? There's no authorities doing anything, and they end up. Let's say
right.
Let's say
the hope is that the Supreme Court would have intervened and said, no, you cannot do that. That is the assumption. And then if they ignore the Supreme Court, then you basically have lost the republic, and you kind of have anarchy, and then there would be fighting, you know. But the hope is that the system would hold, and that if the Supreme Court ordered them to, no, you have to transfer power, that they would do it. There's no guarantee. You know, I mean, other countries, the military gets involved at that point. If you're looking at what happens in other countries, and there's no way of knowing what would happen there.
Who's in charge of the financial system? Who's in charge of many other? I mean, what do you think gets affected right away?
I mean, the economy would go into chaos. In theory, the Congress is the one that passes the budget, and then the Federal Reserve runs the monetary policy. But without a president, you don't get a budget. You can't pass laws. So it would quickly, everything would grind to a halt. That you would have chaos like you have in some of the South American countries in the 70s when there would be a coup and things would just go basically into anarchy. You know, or if you look at what they call a failed state, where things get very tribal.
Do we get what happened if we have that situation? Donald Trump then is not a president. I mean, let's say you say there will be no president to sign laws, but there's no Congress because all these people is they're there. The congressmen cannot come to Congress. They cannot create the laws. And then you have the president. Is the president still active? Can he go back to the White House or not? And then if that happens, if there's a president or not, what happens with if another country wants to take advantage? Let's say one of our enemies.
Yeah, sure. So technically, under I think the 25th Amendment, in the absence of a vice president and a president being in power, the Speaker of the House actually would, or the President pro tem of the Senate would assume the presidency, depending on who's available. And so there would be like an acting president situation until that got settled out. I believe third in line is the House Speaker. And so that would have been Nancy Pelosi in the event of that type of chaos.
And does she need to be in that place, or can she?
No, the president is president wherever the president is. The House Speaker is the House Speaker wherever they are. So no, they don't. They wouldn't have to physically be in the Capitol to do that. No,
they can they still make command the military?
If they're if they are invested, if they become president, yes. I mean, or if they become acting president under the 25th Amendment, yes.
Okay, perfect. Platícanos un poco. Muchas gracias. Quiero agradecerte por esta plática, Curt. Y bueno, hay muchas cosas de qué platicar y sabemos que tienes una descendencia latinoamericana, ¿verdad?
Sí.
Platícanos un poquito.
No, ok. Otra vez. Su pregunta es ¿qué?
What's your your
Tengo una abuela de Ecuador,
Ecuador, exactamente.
de Quito.
Y hablas un poco de español, pero
Sí.
obviamente los términos legales y demás se complica un poco la cosa, pero ¿te gustaría platicarnos un poco de tu carrera en
Mi
español?
carrera,
Sí.
en mi oficina tengo clientes que solo hablar en español y
Okey.
mi español obviamente no es perfecto, pero es suficiente para clientes en una oficina. No soy un traductor oficial,
Sí,
obviamente, pero es posible hablar con
fíjate,
personas en mi oficina o en política.
sí, más o menos, nos quieres platicar un poquito de tu carrera
Sí,
como servidor
y-
público?
sí, en practicar español.
Como en public service, like, as a senator, congressman,
Did I what? Did I?
como sí, podrías
Com-
would you give us a little bit of your background
my background. So for 16 years, 16 años, estoy en la legislatura en Georgia, aquí en el
Ujú,
estado de Georgia. 2 años como un state
legislativo,
representante del estado en un distrito en el condado de Gwinnett, un distrito. En los años pasados el número fue 69.
okey,
Y después de eso, en 2004, yo gano una nueva elección por un senador en la Asamblea General de Georgia por 14 años, 14, no,
die
no está 14, 14
14, 14,
14 años,
14, sí,
14 años en la legislatura y mi distrito fue incluido, fue todo en el condado de Gwinnett, en el, ¿cómo se dice? No en el calle, en el, la espina del distrito fue 85, incluido
okey,
Buford Highway, partes de Jimmy Carter, Gwinnett Place Mall y otras partes de Norcross a Lawrenceville.
okey. Esa es la parte del como senador,
Sí. Uh-huh.
es
Y
donde
el tercer más diverso, el distrito, el tercer más diverso en los Estados Unidos en los años,
¿en qué
en
año
those
estuviste?
years.
¿En qué año estuviste what year was that as a senator?
2005 a 2019.
Sí, pues bastante tiempo. De hecho, pues, durante los finales de los noventas, late 90s and early thousands, Gwinnett was the probably one of the growest, one
One
the
of the
county
fastest
with
growing counties
the
in the
fastest,
country. Mhm.
yes, with
Yep.
Hispanics and it was, I I'm pretty sure there's a challenge, right? There's a challenge to deal with there's a lot of good things
Mhm.
and a lot of things to pay attention, right?
Yep.
From I remember having issues with gangs and having
Mhm.
issues with economy
But
good.
the economy was good, but there were problems with gangs and graffiti. In my district, it was the third most diverse district in the country for any state senate district,
Yeah.
and so you had all that, not just Spanish and English, but people from Africa, people from the Caribbean, people from Asia, AAPI is what we now call Asian American Pacific Islanders. There's over 120 languages spoken in that part of Gwinnett County. So how do
How
you
many? How many? How
integrate
many?
over 120, más que 120 lenguas
What?
en Gwinnett Oeste? Sí. Uh-huh.
Wow, wow. Y estamos hablando, uno de tus logros fue este Community Improvement District. I mean,
Uh-huh.
básicamente, eso fue como una ley, ¿verdad? Un bill que tú aprobaste o que tú ayudaste que fuera aprobado, más bien. Y me gustaría más o menos, esto es bien importante para mí. This is very important for me, so people understand the importance of paying attention to politics every now and then, whether just to to catch certain things there, catch up certain things and pay attention. You probably
Mhm.
might have a new project is coming to your district, right? A new idea, a new park or whatever, and you're in the business of something that might just relate perfectly to that new thing that's going to happen. And then you can take advantage of that if you read the news and you get ready for it. Because sometimes they say, in 6 years, we're going to renovate all this area and we're going to have all these things coming, parks and concerts and this and that. Well, get ready because you might have a great opportunity. So would you please help us to understand a little bit that bill was that you helped to have?
So, basically for areas, it's mostly for areas that are trying to redevelop or rebuild, because suburbs have a tendency, after it gets older, how do you reinvest in an area and renew an area? And it is for how you renew a commercial sector. Like the Gwinnett Village, which was Jimmy Carter Boulevard, or Gwinnett Place Mall, CID, which is the Gwinnett Place Mall area. And it is basically the business owners, the landowners, they agree to raise their taxes. They raise their property taxes. And all the money they raise, though, goes to be invested directly in that district, in infrastructure, in better roads, better sidewalks, green space trails, things to improve the look of the area so that the area doesn't decay, so that it doesn't get, we call it urban blight, so that you can keep an area improving. And that's the idea and the goal behind it, is they raise the taxes, but then that money is not sent off to Atlanta or to South Georgia or to Washington. It's then turned around and spent in that area, mostly because a lot of those areas in Gwinnett have traffic problems. A lot of it does get spent on transportation and sidewalks and revitalizing the look of an area visually. But a lot goes with roads. But also it can play for security. There are extra security vehicles in Gwinnett Place Mall and extra security vehicles in the Gateway 85, which was the Gwinnett Village. And that is the idea of that, is to do that, to sponsor that, to improve the commercial areas.
You did this when you were senator or when you were just a representative?
So in my first term as a representative, we tried it and failed. But I was only in office for one term. When I went into the Senate, we tried it a second time and it passed.
Nice. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations. This, can you tell me just one example, one of the benefits of something that is right now live and kicking?
Well, all of the reverse lane bridges at Pleasant Hill Road and Jimmy Carter Boulevard, both are the result of that type of investment. In that area where they redid that because those are safer. Some of the bridge at Buford Highway and Pleasant Hill Road is another example. That was just a regular intersection before, and there were a lot of accidents there. Yeah.
Perfect.
And so
yes.
they go under. Those are two examples, I guess, or three I can think of.
So basically, you guys take from those businesses around and people involved in that area, they raise their taxes, but with that in mind.
With that in mind, of spending it specifically in that area on improvements in that area. Yeah.
Do they really have a vote on yes or no, or the people is?
There's a board, it's almost like a city council. There's a board that is elected. Some of them are representatives from the local government, and some of them are representatives of the business owners, and they vote on how to spend the money.
Perfect. Is there something, I mean, I believe that, like I said, where can we read about all these things happen in your area, or your all this kind of audience, how do you say, like a town halls or things or improvements, and just keep updated with the community keeps.
So I would say,
what would you recommend?
In reality, because a lot of things are political.
Yeah.
And because most of that side of West Gwinnett, the area that I was in, the Norcross, Duluth, Peachtree Corners, is Democratic. If you look at the Gwinnett County Democratic Party website, or you look at their Facebook page or their Instagram, they will post about community events. If you're trying to have a town hall meeting with elected officials or with any of these community groups, they tend to post those. I'm sure the Republican Party does the same thing, but probably in more Republican areas, to be honest. So I'm not saying that you can't. You probably have to look at both. You can also look at the local newspaper. The AJC sometimes posts them. The Gwinnett County government even has a calendar. You can, if you live in so you can look at their calendar on their website and see those things. It's not easy, honestly. You do have to go looking, but those are the easiest places to find things.
Yes, it's very. I used to be very involved in those kind of public hearings and things. I don't know, for some reason, I found them very interesting just to know and be aware if I should move or not, or you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But tell me if you have or you're seeing something important coming other than just in the elections this 2024 in November. Do you see something, or in the primaries? I think they might have some things to vote for, like a new tax, or just say yes to marijuana or no, or all this kind of. What do you think is in there?
In Georgia, in Gwinnett, we elect our school board members in the May primary. So when they have the primary in May for picking the Republican and the Democrat to run for Congress or state Senate, the reality is that's when the school board members are elected. They all run nonpartisan, Republican and Democrat together, and they get elected in May. And then that's also when judges are elected. And so those are things that's another reason to vote in the primary, even if you aren't a strong Democrat or a strong Republican, is that's how we pick our school board member. And then in November, there will, at least in Gwinnett and Cobb and probably DeKalb, be referendums about transit and about mass transit and expanding mass transit in those three counties. And that will be in November on the ballot, whether to raise our taxes, a penny sales tax, probably. I don't know that for a fact, but that's typically how it is done, to pay for additional mass transportation in Cobb, in Gwinnett, and probably in DeKalb as well.
Would you help me in future interviews to understand better all these
absolutely
these laws or things that we should be aware to vote for?
Yeah.
So understand, and the wording is very important, because sometimes even if you understand English, is that
doesn't mean you understand what's happening.
Yeah, like should I say, I don't want it to happen this, but how can I? What is this? I mean, is that's how laws are made.
Right.
With plus and minus, and minus it's
Right.
very ridiculous. But anyway, is there something, Curt, that you would like to say, invite, or some kind of words that you want to throw to people in order to serve in the public service, from policemen or Latinos?
Right.
Latinos. You some way you are a Latino, a little bit.
Sure. So I would say that get involved. And I mean, it's a shame that the reality is that Latinos are either the largest or the second largest minority group in Georgia, depending on which part of the state you're in. And yet there are very few of them in elected office. I think so many Latinos come here and they want to own their own business and run their own company. And they just, because I guess maybe they thought politics was dirty in their country, they just don't want to get involved here.
Yes.
But if Latinos don't get involved and run for office, then it's very hard to get government to respond to Latino issues. Because you have to play to pay, or pay to play. You have to be part of the system in order to change the system. And so I wish that more Latinos would run for office and get involved. That is one thing. Definitely more Latinos need to vote. Absolutely. And I know sometimes it's hard because you sometimes feel like you're picking the lesser of two evils, but that is the same in every country. Sometimes that happens. But progress, you are only going to make progress if you make progress. But the most important thing, especially for young Latinos, is to consider a career in public service. Consider running for office, working in politics, because you're not going to change. We're not going to get immigration reform, or you're not going to get schools that can handle all of the bilingual, all of the education when you have people coming from so many different cultures, if you don't have people from those different cultures at the table making the decision.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Anything else that you would like to add regarding politics? That's it.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much. And to you, Curt Thompson, and to whoever is going to see this interview, in the future, I really appreciate if you send a comment, either in our podcast, in Spotify, Apple Music, or any kind of place, a platform. Please put in your comments what you think. We might take a few days to respond, but I always send a message in YouTube or Facebook. I always send a message to the attorneys. Siempre mando los quiero repetir esto en español, es bien importante para las personas que no entendieron algo o que tienen una pregunta para el abogado Curt Thompson, que también fue senador y representante aquí en el Congreso de los Estados Unidos de Georgia. Por favor, lo ponen en sus comentarios y yo siempre se los hago llegar a los abogados que entrevisto aquí en Lo que dice la ley de Rock Radio and More. Muchas gracias, Curt, por estar conmigo.
Muchas gracias. De nada. Chao.
Chao.